In breaking news, author Salman Rushdie has been attacked while giving a speech in Western New York. We're going to get more on this now with Kristen Salumi in New York. Well, Kristen, what do we know so far?
Well, very little. The news is just coming out, but a report that was released from the Associated Press, filed by a reporter who was on the scene, described a man taking stage with Salman Rushdie, who was giving a lecture at a nonprofit education center in Western New York. As he took the stage, this man, according to witnesses, jumped up there and began attacking him, either punching or stabbing him, and Rushdie fell to the ground. The man was quickly restrained, and according to unconfirmed reports that we're seeing on Twitter, he was able to walk off stage with assistance after getting some help. This all comes many years after Rushdie released his book, The Satanic Verses, which was very controversial. That was back in 1988. It was considered blasphemous by many Muslims and banned in several countries, including South Africa, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Iran. They had riots in many of those countries as a result of the book. And a year after it was published, Iran's leader, Ayatollah Khomeini, issued a fatwa against him, and a $3 million reward was offered for his death. And Rushdie went into hiding for 10 years. And in recent years, he's come back out in public. He has a book that is due to be released in February. But this was a lecture that he's giving at this educational center, and someone jumped on stage to attack him. And really, that's all we know right now. But it appears that he was able to walk off stage with assistance. So that is what we know at this point.
Okay, with that breaking news, Kristen, for now, thank you.
Latest news, Iran. Salman Rushdie, the author whose writing led to death threats from Iran in the 1980s, was attacked and stabbed in the neck on Friday as he was about to give a lecture in Western New York. An Associated Press reporter witnessed a man from the stage at the Chautauqua institution and began punching or stabbing Rushdie as he was being introduced. The 75-year-old author fell to the floor, and the man was restrained. Rushdie was quickly surrounded by a small group of people who held up his legs, presumably to send more blood to his chest. Bloodstains couldn't be seen on his chair and on a screen that was behind him. New York police later said Rushdie suffered a stab wound to his neck and had been airlifted to a hospital. His condition is not immediately known. Hundreds of people in the audience gasped at the sight of the attack and were later evacuated. Iran's government has long since distanced itself from Khomeini's decree of a $3 million fatwa against Rushdie for his book, The Satanic Verses. But anti-Rushdie sentiment has lingered. And in 2012, a semi-official Iranian religious foundation raised the bounty for Rushdie from $2.8 million to $3.3 million. Rushdie dismissed the threat at the time, saying there was no evidence of people being interested in the reward. That year, Rushdie published a memoir, Joseph Anton, about the fatwa. The title came from the pseudonym Rushdie had used while in hiding. Former Trump administration National Security Advisor John Bolton said on Thursday that the alleged Iranian operative plot to kill him, unveiled in charges announced by the Justice Department this week, provides a real window into what the government in Tehran is like. Bolton said on Thursday on CNN, "It is not just a window into how they behave with the terrorist activities and sponsorship of terrorist groups, but how they conduct their foreign policy altogether. This is not a regime that can be trusted to meet its commitments or obligations. It is a regime that sees the United States as an enemy and acts that way. The Department of Justice announced on Wednesday charges against an alleged Iranian operative accused of plotting to assassinate Bolton, likely in retaliation for the killing of top general Qasem Soleimani by the United States in January 2020. Former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo was also allegedly targeted by the Iranians. Bolton also learned of the threat upon the Department of Justice release of the criminal complaint on Wednesday. He released a statement shortly after, thanking the Department of Justice, the FBI, and the Secret Service for their diligence and protection. Bolton also said on Thursday that having gone through the changing documents, he's aware of the nature of the threat and just how detailed the work was to send me off to the great beyond. He also noted the extent to which the Iranian government was engaged in the planning. Shahram Pousafi, a member of the Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, allegedly conspired between October of 2021 and April of this year to kill John Bolton. He has been charged with the use of interstate commerce facilities in the commission of murder for hire and providing and attempting to provide material support to a transnational murder plot. Pousafi worked on behalf of the the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps in his attempts to pay people in the United States to murder Bolton, the Justice Department had said. The former National Security Advisor said also on Thursday that while he doesn't know the specifics of others who may have been targeted by Iran, it is very clear that it is not just former government officials that Iran is after. An Iranian American journalist in late July was the subject of a near attack outside her Brooklyn home after being the target of an international kidnapping plot last year, said to be orchestrated by an Iranian intelligence network, the New York Times reported. That's the latest news. Now my thoughts. Well, all wars are based on lies. As Aetius the Greek once said, the casualty of war is the truth. The first casualty of war is the truth. And so what can we say about the newest enemy? Well, with the recent assassination of Dr. Ayman al-Zawahiri of the nefarious international Salafist group Al-Qaeda leadership is now either in prison or dead. They no longer pose an international threat to the West and its interests. So now a new enemy has to be made. Well, step right in: Iran, China, or North Korea. And since we are heading into a new election cycle in 2022 with the House and Senate up for grabs, while the Democrats are continuing to fund Nazi separatist groups in Ukraine with billions and billions of dollars from the Biden administration, the Republicans are trying to ramp themselves up for a win and declare war in a different geographical location, most notably Iran and China. Iran has the momentum, and the momentum comes from the Israeli government as well as the Saudi government. Both countries see Iran as a direct threat to the region and always have for the last 70 years. With Israel, it's political. With Saudi Arabia, it's religious. And they will use the United States military to enforce their prejudices and hatred for this country, as they did with Iraq. And the American people, who are generally ignorant about geopolitics in general, and that's to be expected because we have a very dishonest and prejudicial legacy media in this country who push not only division upon the citizenry, but also misinformation, nothing short of disinformation, and even a hint of lies, straight up. They don't lie straight out, not yet anyway. I think that's next, because we aren't totally stupid yet as a people. We do have many others who are questioning the narrative of the government. But sure enough, they are performing psychological operations on the American populace through mass media. Whether you watch the TV or you watch the legacy media through the computer, through your phone, or read it through the tabloids or online. Nevertheless, most of the legacy media is bought and paid for by interests of both the Democratic and Republican establishments, who are one and the same when it comes to certain issues. And most of them are foreign issues, or issues involving foreign governments, the banking industry, the fossil fuel industry, the private military industrial complexes. But when it comes to domestic issues, these are divisive issues meant to drag on years and years of arguments and legal wrangling in the House and Senate, and of course, in the Supreme Court. And that's because you're told that the wheels of justice are slow. That's not the case when it comes to their special interest groups, where they act very swiftly. Don't be persuaded otherwise. Iran is not the largest single case of exporter on terrorism. That would be Saudi Arabia and the Gulf. And once you understand the groups like Islamic State, Al-Qaeda, Abu Sayyaf, Boko Haram, the ideology behind these groups are not Shia Islam, which is what Iran is primarily made up of. The Persians are of the Shia faith. This Salafi Wahhabi organizations that I mentioned are propagated by Saudi Arabia and the Gulf. Now, there is a large majority populace of Sunnis, which is the branch of Islam that Wahhabism is from, that speak out against this heretical, ultra-puritanical form of Islam, consider it non-Islamic, which they are right. That's why a lot of the Sunni Muslims think the Saudi government itself is a heretical country and are basically munafiq, or from the English, fake Muslim, because they sold out to the United States. As for Israel, well, they are indeed a repressive government. And if you haven't been paying attention to what's going on in the last just week of the massive amounts of deaths, bombings in Gaza Strip, the constant abuse of civil liberties and human rights, basic human rights of the Palestinians, then if you've been ignoring this, you are most likely a Zionist at this point. And I don't need you to be an Israeli Zionist. The majority of Zionists are Christian evangelicals, the largest voting bloc in the United States. The very same people who believe that Christ will come down and kill everybody on earth, except for them, who will be raptured into the sky like a inflated balloon. And I'm not here to make fun of your religion. I'm here to tell you that your fanaticism is not religion. It's fanaticism. And the majority of these people are not spiritual by any nature. In fact, they probably would crucify Christ because he was a liberal. And I'm not talking about the liberal they define as the left today. I'm talking about in the classic case, he was a liberal-minded individual, as according to the Bible. But I'm not talking about religion here. I'm talking about the mentality. Most of these people who are from a very specific mindset of Israel first, because they need Armageddon to happen to bring about the resurrection of Christ so he could kill all the Jews that don't convert to Christ. Zionists are basically secularists and don't believe in religion. Funny thing is that the Haredi Jews in Israel, actually the more religious Jews, side with the idea that Palestinians should be living along with them. And yet at the same time, they believe that the Mashiach will come when the third temple is built and make slaves of the Gentiles, non-Jews, 500, I believe, for every Jew in heaven. Now, like I said, I'm not here for a religious diatribe or debate. You could believe whatever you want. But this is what it permeates in our politics and creates the division that we see today, which lead to these cancerous, very acidic decisions made in policy, whether it's Israeli policy, whether it's Saudi policy or US policy, but they're all intertwined, leading to the current problems that we see today. And if we don't understand the basics of that much, then you can expect, if the Republicans win the House and Senate, which I believe they're going to this November, you could see that the Ukraine conflict will suddenly disappear in time, not overnight, but it will disappear, slowly delve into proxy wars, just like we saw in Afghanistan, leading to a civil war, and a jump into either a war with Iran or a war with China, or it could be both, really spreading us thin, in which you will see in the few months that we enter that war, through the legacy media, propaganda, psychological operations for war of your mind to persuade you to accept the reality that China and Iran are the enemies, not just to the United States, but also to their interests. And I'm here to tell you, don't fall for it.